Today we're going to talk about butterflies and moths as pollinators in the garden. Today will be presented by Jennifer Albinus and Tess Catlin. Butterflies are less efficient than bees, but still important in the pollinator world. They're attracted most to plants that are brightly colored, open during the day, and have clusters of flowers as blooms as opposed to just one flower. Some examples of butterflies as pollinators are larger butterflies that have migratory paths, such as the monarch butterfly. The monarch has a migration path of over 3,000 miles and travels from Canada all the way down to Mexico and back in a multi-general migratory path. Over the last 20 years, their habitat has decreased to near 90% of habitat loss from what it was. And they are specific to milkweed as their host plant. They will only lay their eggs on milkweed plants. And the milkweed has been disappearing because it used to grow in between farmer crops. It used to grow on roadsides, and farmers and farms are being located closer to roadsides, not giving the milkweed those areas in between crops and on roadsides to grow. And so the loss of room for the milkweed plant to grow is what is destroying the habitat of the monarch butterfly. Milkweed also requires larger insects to create seeds, such as large wasps or bumblebees. So you may end up attracting that kind of pollinator as well if you decide to plant milkweed seeds. You only need to plant 10 milkweed plants to be able to be considered a monarch butterfly way station and attract monarchs on their path of those 3,000 miles through the United States each year. We have multiple kinds of milkweed plant available in the Lane Seed Library. So if you're interested in growing milkweed, we can get you started for free. Attracting butterflies to your garden, what should you do? So you want to provide plants that have a large variety from annuals to perennials, herbs, and trees. And we're going to talk about what some of those may be. You also want to, in the early spring, make sure that you allow dandelions in your garden or in your yard. They're one of the first blooming flowers in this area in the early spring. And as those butterflies emerge from their cocoons, that's one of their initial food sources in early spring before a lot of the other flowers or pollinating sources are in bloom. You also want to consider a water source such as a bird bath or other outdoor water source for this living pollinator, and plant native species. So over to the right, you'll see some of the species of plant in this area that would attract butterflies to your garden, such as wildflowers, spiderwort, yarrow, phlox, violets, and the butterfly bush. You can plant forsythia, dogwood, or pussy willow for trees and bushes, and those will also attract butterflies. So not all butterflies are migratory. Some of them are overwintering, which means they kind of hunker down in a mostly dormant state over winter, and then they emerge in the spring. One example is the zebra swallowtail pictured in the top right, and they will only lay their eggs on the pawpaw, which is a fruit-bearing tree. Pawpaws survive and thrive in areas where it is cold in the winter and hot in the summer, much like southwestern Ohio. And another example of an overwintering butterfly is the eastern tiger swallowtail, which will pollinate trees such as sassafras, ash trees, and tulip trees. So you can incorporate those into your yard if you're interested in attracting the eastern tiger swallowtail. Moths can also be considered as pollinators. They're not quite as popular as bees or butterflies, but they pollinate mostly at night, which is why a lot of people don't consider moths as pollinators. They're attracted to light colored and white flowers, such as wild orchids. The picture that is shown is specifically a prairie fringed orchid that is pollinated exclusively by the hummingbird moth. And the prairie fringed orchid is threatened at the state and federal level, but this isn't a specific example of how a moth can be needed to exclusively pollinate a specific plant for its survival. The power of pollination. I want to talk to you about the reintroduction of a nearly extinct or endangered species. At the very far left, you see the wild lupine plant, which was nearly extinct in Ohio in the 1980s. And in 1988, it was discovered that the reason was because of severe habitat loss. The wild lupine plant is only found in oak savannas, and they need to have periodic burning of the forest floor in order to be able to spread out and survive. And the burning in the 1980s of the forest floors had stopped. Well, in 1988, it was realized that that burning was needed, and they started burning the oak savannas again, the underbrush, to clear it out so that the wild lupine would be able to be reintroduced. And it was also realized in 1992 by a conservation effort that included the Toledo Zoo that they wanted to try to reintroduce the Carner blue butterfly that you'll see pictured in the middle. And the Carner blue was, of course, not found in Ohio due to the decrease of the wild lupine plant. And the Carner blue uses the wild lupine exclusively as their host plant for laying their eggs. So in 1997, the zoo was able to receive a batch of adult Carner blues, and they were able to exclusively breed them, and they were able to be successful. So now the Carner blue butterfly has been reintroduced into the Kitty Todd Preserve and has been one of the only successful reintroduction of an extinct or endangered species, not just in the state of Ohio, but also in the nation. And the other animal that is pictured to the far right is the frosted elfin, and the frosted elfin also uses the wild lupine exclusively as their host plant. So not only were they able to help the Carner blue, but also the frosted elfin by reintroducing the lupine. Right now, the wild lupine is located exclusively in Hamilton County and Lucas County in Ohio. And in Hamilton County, they are facing the same issue of those crops not being burned, and the wild lupine's habitat is disappearing because it does not have the room to spread out. Moths I've mentioned already, but just to give you a little bit more information of moths as pollinators, they're attracted to flowers that are open at night, pale in color, and they emit a certain fragrance either late in the day or early evening. And there are specific flowers such as the moonflower that will attract moths specifically. Some takeaways are provide a variety of flowers, trees, and shrubs. I mentioned some of them, and there are also some that are available in the Lane Seed Library. If you happen to see a cocoon of a butterfly or moth in your garden when you are cleaning up at the end of the season, don't move that plant because it is probably host to an overwintering pollinator. Also, plant native species. So you want to focus on flowers and herbs and trees that will thrive in this area, and also provide a water source for those animals to be able to continue to pollinate.